Welcome to No Rescue Audiobooks. Today we are diving into one of the most misunderstood forces in human dynamics. Not power, not authority, influence. Here is the truth most people never hear. You do not need a title to lead. You do not need a corner office. You do not need a team reporting to you. The most influential people in every room, in every boardroom, every family dinner, every community, they are rarely the ones with the biggest job title. They are the ones who know how to connect, how to inspire, how to move people to act. Today we are unpacking the art of influence, how to lead without authority. This book gives you the exact blueprint to become that person. Chapter by chapter, we're going to cover 15 principles. From mastering your presence and emotional intelligence, to navigating resistance, building unshakable credibility, and sustaining influence that outlasts any job title you will ever hold. Here is why this matters right now. A 2023 Gallup study found that only 21% of employees feel genuinely inspired by their manager's leadership. 21%. That means 79% of people, nearly 8 out of 10, are waiting for someone to show up and lead them differently. That someone can be you. Whether you are a first-time manager, a seasoned executive, or someone who has never held a leadership title in their life, this book was written for you. By the end of this video, you will have a complete roadmap. Influence anyone, anywhere, without demanding respect, without forcing compliance, without pretending to be someone you are not. Each chapter builds on the last. Stick with us for the whole journey. If you want to jump ahead, check the timestamps in the description, but I encourage you to stay. Ready? Let's get into it. Chapter 1. The Mindset of Influence. Everything starts with a mindset shift. Not a technique, not a tactic, a shift in how you see the entire game. Most people believe influence comes from authority. They think that once they get the title, the promotion, the corner office, the official role, then people will listen. The book destroys that belief in the very first chapter. And it does it with one story. In 1990, a man walked out of prison after 27 years. He had no title, no formal power, no team, no budget. He had lost nearly 3 decades of his life. And yet, the moment Nelson Mandela walked out of Victor Verster prison, he commanded the attention of an entire nation. He did not demand obedience. He did not issue orders. He earned trust. He inspired belief. He moved people, not by the force of his position, but by the force of his character. Within 4 years, he negotiated the end of apartheid and became the first democratically elected president of South Africa. Zero formal authority, maximum influence. Here is the lesson the book draws from that story. Influence is not about what you demand from people. It is about what you inspire in them. That is the shift this entire book is built on. The book calls it moving from authority-based thinking to attraction-based thinking. Authority-based thinking says, people follow me because they have to. Attraction-based thinking says, people follow me because they want to. One creates compliance. The other creates loyalty. They are not the same thing. The book gives us what it calls the 3-shift model. 3 mental moves that change everything. Shift 1. From I need people to obey me to I need people to believe in me. Shift 2. From I speak to command to I speak to connect. Shift 3. From my title gives me power to my character gives me influence. These 3 shifts sound simple, but most leaders never make them. Because it feels safer to rely on the org chart than to earn trust every single day. Here is what the book makes clear. The org chart gives you a starting point. Character is what determines how far you actually go. Think about the people who have influenced you most in your life. A teacher, a coach, a mentor, a parent. Now ask yourself, how many of them had authority over you in the traditional sense? Maybe some did, but that is not why they influenced you. They influenced you because of who they were, how they made you feel, what they believed about you. That is attraction-based leadership, and you can build it starting today. Here is your exercise for this chapter. Think of the most influential person in your life. Not the most powerful, the most influential. Write down 3 specific things they did that made you trust them. Now look at that list. Ask yourself, how many of those things required a title? Almost certainly none. That list is your starting point. Those 3 things are the foundation of your own influence blueprint. You have just shifted the foundation. But here is the thing. Influence does not start when you open your mouth. It starts the moment you walk into the room. In Chapter 2, we're going to talk about the silent force that determines whether people lean in or tune out before you say a single word. Chapter 2, the power of presence. Chapter 1 gave us the mindset. Now, let's talk about the signal. Every person broadcasts a signal before they speak. It comes through your posture, your stillness, the way you enter a room, the way your eyes move when someone is talking to you. The book calls this presence. And here is what most people get wrong about it. Presence is not a personality trait you were born with. It is a skill you build deliberately. The book opens this chapter with one example. Oprah Winfrey. Every person who has sat across from Oprah, on camera, off camera, in a green room, at a dinner, describes the same experience. She makes you feel like you are the only person in the world. Not because she is the loudest in the room, not because she dominates the conversation, because she is completely, fully, undividedly there. A television producer who worked with her for 11 years described watching Oprah walk into a reception of 500 people. Within 20 minutes, every single conversation felt personal. That is not luck. That is not charisma you were born with. That is a craft. And the book breaks that craft into 4 specific pillars. The 4-pillar presence model. Pillar 1, physical grounding. Stand with your weight evenly distributed. Shoulders back and down. Chin level, not dropped, not raised. When you sit, plant both feet on the floor. Do not cross your arms. Do not lean away. Your body is sending a message before your mouth opens. Make sure it says, I am here, I am stable, and I am not going anywhere. Pillar 2, energetic availability. This one is simple. Phone face down or out of sight. Body turned toward the person. Eyes on them. Not on the door, not on the screen behind them. Energetic availability means you are genuinely open to what is happening in this moment. Not already thinking about the next meeting. Not composing your response while they are still talking. Open, present, available. Pillar 3, vocal intentionality. Your pace, your pause, your tone, these are not accidents. Leaders with presence speak slower than they think they should. They pause longer than feels comfortable. That pause after a key point, it does not signal uncertainty. It signals confidence. Try this. In your next important conversation, slow your speaking pace by 20%. Notice what happens. The other person leans in. They listen harder. Presence is magnetic when you stop rushing. Pillar 4, emotional congruence. This is the one most people overlook. Emotional congruence means your inner state matches your outer signal. If you feel anxious but you perform confidence, people sense the gap. They cannot always name it, but they feel it. The book is direct about this. You cannot fake presence. You have to actually arrive. That means before a high-stakes conversation, you do not just rehearse your words. You settle your state. 10 deep breaths. A moment of stillness. A conscious decision to be fully in this room with this person right now. That internal landing is what produces real presence. Here is your exercise for this chapter. Before your next meeting or important conversation, try this. Stand or sit still for 60 seconds. No phone, no fidgeting, no reviewing your notes. Just breathe. Notice how differently you enter that interaction. That stillness is the beginning of presence. And presence gets people to look at you. But to make them truly follow you, to make them lean in, stay engaged, and feel genuinely connected, you need something most leaders completely underestimate. It is not charisma. It is not confidence. In Chapter 3, we are going to reveal the single most powerful influence skill almost nobody talks about. And it has nothing to do with what you say. Chapter 3. Master the art of listening. You have heard this your whole life. Listen more than you speak. You probably nodded. You probably agreed. And then you went right back to preparing your next point while the other person was still mid-sentence. We all do it. And it is costing you influence every single day. The book makes a bold claim in this chapter. The most influential people in any room are almost never the loudest. They are the most deeply engaged listeners. And then it backs that claim with one of the most striking examples in the entire book. Bill Clinton. You can have any opinion you want about his politics. But here is a fact that people across the spectrum, allies, opponents, rivals, have confirmed repeatedly. Clinton is the most magnetic listener most of them have ever encountered. His former advisor James Carville put it plainly. Clinton's ability to make anyone feel heard was his single greatest political weapon. Not his policies, not his charisma, his listening. Multiple people who sat across from Clinton at events described the same experience. He oriented his entire body toward you. He used almost zero interruptions. He reflected your emotions back accurately. And when the conversation was over, you walked away feeling like you had just had the most important conversation of your day. That feeling created loyalty. That feeling created trust. That feeling created influence. Now here's what the book makes clear. That was not passive. That was a strategy. Listening is not the absence of talking. Listening is an active influence tool. And the book gives us a framework to develop it. The 3-level listening system. Level 1, surface listening. This is hearing the words. Most people operate here almost all the time. They hear the sentence. They process the meaning. They prepare to respond. Surface listening keeps you in the conversation. It does not make you influential. Level 2, contextual listening. This is hearing what is behind the words. Why is this person saying this? What do they actually need from this conversation? What fear or motivation is driving this message? Contextual listening requires you to slow down, to ask one more question instead of jumping to your response, to wonder, what is the real conversation happening right now? Level 3, emotional listening. This is the rarest level and the most powerful. Emotional listening means you hear what the person is not saying, but desperately needs to have heard. The frustration underneath the professional language. The fear underneath the confident presentation. The longing for recognition underneath the routine update. When you listen at this level, something shifts. People do not just feel heard. They feel understood. And the person who makes you feel understood, that is the person you trust with everything. That is influence at its deepest. The book is honest about how hard this is, because our brains process language at roughly 400 words per minute. Most people speak at about 150. That gap, that 250-word space, is where most of us go wrong. We fill it with our own thoughts, our own judgments, our own next move. The practice is learning to fill that gap with curiosity instead. Here is your exercise for this chapter. In your next one-on-one conversation, set one rule for yourself. Before you respond to anything, pause for 3 full seconds. During those 3 seconds, ask yourself one question. What does this person actually need from this conversation? Now, what do they say? What do they need? Try it once. You will be shocked at how much you have been missing. And the conversations that feel the most stuck, the ones that go in circles, that produce friction, that leave both people frustrated, a lot of those conversations change at level 3. Because the surface topic is rarely the real topic. Listening builds deep connection. But to truly move people, to shift what they feel and what they decide, you need to understand the engine running beneath every human interaction. In Chapter 4, we are getting into emotional intelligence. the force that separates good leaders from great ones. Chapter 4. Emotional Intelligence as a Superpower. For decades, the business world bet on IQ. Hire the smartest people. Promote the highest performers. Trust the numbers. And then the research started coming back. And it said something uncomfortable. IQ predicts about 20% of career success. The other 80%? Emotional intelligence. The ability to recognize, understand, and navigate emotions in yourself and in others turns out to be the most reliable predictor of influence. More than IQ, more than experience, more than any technical skill you will ever develop. The book uses one story to make this undeniable. Satya Nadella. When Nadella became CEO of Microsoft in 2014, the company was struggling, not with technology, with culture. Engineers competed against each other instead of collaborating. Fear ran through the organization. Talented people were leaving. Nadella's first major move was not a product launch. It was not a restructuring. He required every senior leader to read a book called Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. Then he did something no Microsoft CEO had done before. He shared a deeply personal story publicly about raising his son Zane, who was born with cerebral palsy. He talked about what that experience taught him, about empathy, about learning to truly see another person's reality, about leading from a place of growth rather than fear. That vulnerability did not weaken him in the eyes of his team. It transformed the entire culture. Within 3 years, Microsoft's market cap doubled. Within 6 years, it crossed $1 trillion. Emotional intelligence did not just change the mood in the building. It changed the business results. So how does it actually work? The book gives us the EQ influence cycle for stages that operate in sequence. Stage 1, self-awareness. You cannot manage what you cannot see. Self-awareness means you know what you are feeling and you know why. Not just I'm stressed, but I'm feeling defensive right now because this feedback is touching a fear I have about not being good enough. That level of specificity is where the power lives. Because when you can name it, you own it. When you own it, it stops owning you. Stage 2, self-regulation. This is not suppression. The book is clear about that. Self-regulation does not mean you pretend not to feel things. It means you choose your response instead of defaulting to your reaction. Reaction is automatic. Response is intentional. The pause between the trigger and the behavior, that pause is where your leadership lives. Stage 3, empathy. Empathy is not sympathy. Sympathy says, I feel sorry for what you're going through. Empathy says, I understand what you're going through because I'm trying to see it from inside your experience. The difference matters enormously in leadership. Empathy means you accurately read what another person is feeling, not just what they are saying. You notice the tension in their voice. You catch the micro-expression that contradicts their words. You sense when someone is performing confidence they do not actually feel. And then you respond to what is actually happening, not just to the surface. Stage 4, social navigation. This is where the previous 3 stages pay off. Social navigation means you use your self-awareness, your regulation, and your empathy to guide interactions toward productive outcomes. You know when to push and when to ease back. You know when someone needs to be challenged and when they need to be supported. You know when the right move is to say nothing at all. This is what the book means when it calls emotional intelligence a superpower. It is not about being nice. It is about being precise. Here is your exercise for this chapter. For the next 48 hours, keep what the book calls an emotion log. Every time you feel a strong emotion, frustration, excitement, anxiety, pride, irritation, write it down immediately. Use this sentence. I felt blank when blank because I needed blank. Fill in all 3 blanks. This builds the self-awareness muscle that everything else in this book depends on. You will start to see patterns. You will notice your triggers. You will realize that most of your emotional reactions are pointing at something specific you need. And now you can address that need directly instead of letting the emotion run the show. You now understand the emotional engine of influence. But here is the hard truth. None of that works if people do not believe you. In Chapter 5, we are building the one thing that makes everything else possible: credibility. Chapter 5. Building unshakable credibility. Here is a question the book asks right at the start of this chapter. Think of the last time you stopped trusting someone. Was it one big thing? Sometimes, but more often, it was a pattern of small things. A promise that slipped, an answer that felt slightly off, a moment where their words and their actions pointed in different directions. Credibility is not built in one big moment. It is built in hundreds of small ones, and it can be destroyed in a single careless act. The book makes this real with one of the most striking examples of credibility under pressure in modern business history. October 2008. Financial markets are collapsing. CEOs across Wall Street are running from cameras. Governments are scrambling. Nobody knows what to say. Warren Buffett writes an op-ed in the New York Times. He says he is personally buying American stocks with his own money right now, not advising others to buy, not suggesting it might be a good idea, doing it himself, publicly, in the worst market environment in a generation. That single act, matching his words with his money in real time, in public, under maximum pressure, is why Buffett's credibility has never been matched by any investor in the modern era. He did not build it in that moment. He revealed it. 50 years of small, consistent acts of integrity, of saying what he would do and then doing it, all of that came to a point on that one day. The book takes this story and distills it into a framework. The credibility triangle. 3 elements. All 3 required. Element 1. Competence. Do you know what you were talking about? This sounds obvious, but competence in leadership is not just about expertise in your field. It is about doing the work before you speak, researching before the meeting, understanding the context before you offer a solution, anticipating the questions before they are asked. The book says it plainly. Credibility starts with preparation. Show up ready every time. Element 2. Consistency. This is the one most leaders underestimate. Consistency means you do what you say. Every time. Not most times. Every time. The book cites research showing that 70% of employees distrust leaders who fail to follow through on promises. 70%. That is not a leadership failure you can solve with a better strategy deck. It is a behavioral failure, and it has a behavioral solution. Make fewer promises. Keep every one of them. The book calls this commitment language. Instead of "I'll try to get back to you," say, "I will get back to you by Thursday." Then get back to them by Thursday. That is it. That is how consistency works. Simple, unglamorous, and devastatingly effective. Element 3. Courage. This is the one that separates credible leaders from merely competent ones. Courage means you are willing to say the hard truth, even when it costs you. The leader who tells the board what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. The manager who gives honest feedback instead of empty praise. The teammate who names the thing in the room everyone else is ignoring. This is what the book calls earned credibility. Because anyone can be honest when it is easy. The leaders who build unshakable credibility are the ones who stay honest when it is not. Here is your exercise for this chapter. Identify one promise you have made to your team, your family, or yourself that you have not fully kept. This week, either keep it or go back to that person and renegotiate honestly. Acknowledge the gap. Offer a new commitment. Follow through. That one act of integrity does more for your credibility than 100 impressive presentations ever will. You are credible. People believe you. Now the question becomes, how do you use your words to move them? Chapter 6 is where we get into the language of persuasion. the specific words, structures, and patterns that make your message impossible to ignore. Chapter 6. The language of persuasion. Most people think persuasion is about having the right argument. Build a strong enough case. Gather enough evidence. Present it clearly, and the other person will come around. The book has a different view. Logic alone almost never changes a mind, because people do not make decisions the way we think they do. The research on this is clear. Decisions happen in the emotional brain first. The rational brain justifies them afterward. That means if your persuasion only hits the rational brain, you are working at the wrong level. Persuasive leaders understand this, and they use language architectures that align with how the human brain actually makes choices. The book makes this vivid with one example. January 9th, 2007. Steve Jobs steps onto a stage in San Francisco. He does not open with specs. He does not open with a slide deck. He opens with a problem. He says, the most advanced phones out there are called smartphones. But the problem is they're not so smart. Then he pauses. He lets that land. And then, the solution. That structure, problem, tension, solution, is the oldest persuasive arc in human communication. And Jobs used it with surgical precision. The iPhone keynote is still studied in business schools worldwide, not as a product launch, as a masterclass in persuasive language. And the book gives you that same structure. It calls it the four-part persuasion arc. Part 1. Name the pain. Do not start with your idea. Start with the problem. Articulate the pain your audience is feeling better than they can articulate it themselves. When you do that, when you name exactly what they are experiencing, something happens in their brain. They think, this person gets it. This person understands my reality. And the moment someone believes you understand their reality, they open up to your solution. Part 2. Amplify the stakes. What happens if nothing changes? Make the cost of inaction real and specific. Not dramatic, not alarmist. Real. If we do not solve this by Q3, we lose market position we will not recover for 18 months. Specific. Grounded. True. The stakes have to feel tangible, not theoretical. Part 3. Offer the bridge. Now, and only now, you introduce your idea. Not as a pitch, as the natural answer to the problem you have already established. Because if you have named the pain accurately and made the stakes real, your solution does not feel like a sell. It feels like a relief. Part 4. Make it inevitable. End with a future they already want. Paint one specific image of what success looks like. Make it concrete. Make it theirs. 6 months from now, our customers will not just be satisfied. They will be telling other people to find us. That future should feel so real and so close that saying yes to you feels like the only logical move. Here is the pattern one more time. Name the pain. Amplify the stakes. Offer the bridge. Make it inevitable. For steps, every persuasive conversation, every pitch, every important ask, this arc applies. Here is your exercise for this chapter. Take one idea you need to pitch this week. To your boss, your team, a client, anyone. Rewrite your pitch using the four-part arc. Do not start with your idea. Start with the pain. Write it out before the conversation. Then deliver it. Notice how differently people respond compared to your usual approach. The arc works because it respects how people actually think. It meets them where they are and walks them to where you need them to be. You now have a language structure. But structure alone is cold. It informs. It does not move. In Chapter 7, we are adding the one ingredient that makes every message stick long after the conversation ends. The one thing that activates 7 areas of the human brain simultaneously. Logic convinces, but this converts. Story. Chapter 7. Storytelling as your secret weapon. Chapter 6 gave you the language architecture, the persuasion arc, the 4-part structure. Now here's the problem. A perfect structure with no emotion is just a well-organized argument. and well-organized arguments lose to stories every single time. Here's why. When you hear a data point, two areas of your brain activate. Language processing, logic, that is it. When you hear a story, 7 areas activate simultaneously. Language, logic, emotion, memory, empathy, sensory processing, motor cortex. Your brain does not distinguish between a story that is happening to you and a story you are simply hearing. It responds to both as if they are real. That is not a metaphor. That is neuroscience. And it is why logic convinces, but story converts. The book opens this chapter with Brené Brown. In 2010, Brown gave a TED Talk on vulnerability. She had data, 12 years of research, thousands of interviews, but she did not open with the data. She opened with a story about herself. She said, "A year into my research, I had what I called a breakdown. My therapist called it a spiritual awakening." That one sentence disarmed an audience of millions. It lowered every defense in the room, and it opened people to ideas they would have otherwise resisted. That talk became the most watched TED Talk of all time, not because of the research, because of the story that made the research feel human. So how do you build stories at work? The book gives us a 3-part structure it calls story architecture. Part 1, the setup. Who were you, or who was someone else before the insight? Paint the world as it was. Give the listener a person to follow. Part 2, the turning point. What happened? The moment of tension, failure, collision, or revelation. This is the engine of the story. No turning point, no story. Part 3, the lesson. What changed? And why does it matter to the listener right now in their life today? The setup gets them interested. The turning point gets them invested. The lesson gives them something to carry out the door. All 3, in that order. Every time, the book makes an important point about emotion. Stories work because they make people feel, and the feelings that land hardest are the universal ones. Hope, fear, pride, shame, relief, belonging. You do not need a dramatic story. You need a true one with a real emotional core. A manager who admitted she almost quit and what made her stay. A founder who got rejected 14 times before the breakthrough. A team leader who gave the wrong feedback and lost a great employee. Real, specific, emotionally honest. That is what sticks. And then the book addresses the thing that stops most people. They say, "I'm not a storyteller." The book's answer is direct. You do not start by telling great stories. You start by telling real ones. You have a story bank. You just have not built it yet. Here is your exercise for this chapter. Write your signature story. The one story from your life that captures why you lead the way you do. Write it in 3 sentences. Before, what happened? What I learned. That is it. 3 sentences. Then practice saying it out loud. Once a day for a week. By the end of that week, it will sound natural. And once it sounds natural, it becomes your most powerful influence tool in any room. You can persuade. You can tell stories. But even the most compelling message hits resistance sometimes. In Chapter 8, we're going to talk about the counterintuitive principle that makes people trust you more, not less. The power of giving before you ask. Chapter 8. The influence loop. Give first, lead always. Most people think of influence as a transaction. You want something from someone. You figure out how to get it. You make your move. The book calls that approach exhausting and ultimately self-defeating because transactional influence has a ceiling. It works once, maybe twice, and then people start to see the pattern and they pull back. Sustainable influence works completely differently. It operates on a cycle. Give first, give often, give without an immediate ask, and watch as the influence compounds, silently, consistently, over time. The book calls this the influence loop, and the evidence behind it comes from one of the most counterintuitive research findings in organizational psychology. Adam Grant, professor at the Wharton School, author of Give and Take. Grant spent years studying thousands of professionals across industries. Engineers, salespeople, lawyers, doctors. You want to know who ends up on top. The takers, people who maximize what they get from every interaction. The matchers, people who keep careful score, give when they receive. Or the givers, people who contribute without keeping track at all. His findings shocked the business world. The highest earners, the most respected leaders, the most influential people, they were disproportionately givers. Not the takers, not even the matchers, the givers. But here is the nuance the book emphasizes. Not all givers win. Some givers burn out. They give to everyone indiscriminately until they have nothing left. The givers who build the deepest influence are the ones who give strategically to people and causes aligned with their values and goals. And they give in 3 specific ways. The book calls it the 3-layer give. Layer 1, give knowledge. Share what you know without hoarding it. Your expertise, your contacts, your lessons learned. Make them available. Don't protect information as if sharing it diminishes you. It doesn't. It multiplies you. Layer 2, give attention. Make people feel genuinely seen and valued. Remember what they told you last time. Follow up. Ask the real question, not the polite one. Attention is the scarcest resource in a modern world. Giving it fully is an act of enormous generosity. Layer 3, give opportunity. Open doors for people before they ask. Recommend someone for a role they are not yet applying for. Make an introduction they did not know they needed. Share a platform with someone who has not yet found theirs. Grant himself embodies this. He answers emails from strangers. He mentors PhD students for free. He consistently ranks as the most popular professor at one of the most competitive business schools in the world. His influence is not built on what he extracts from his network. It is built on what he deposits into it, constantly, genuinely, without a running tally. Here is your exercise for this chapter. This week, do one unrequested act of value for someone in your network. Not a favor they asked for. Something you initiated. Send a resource that would genuinely help them. Make an introduction they would benefit from. Write a recommendation they did not request. Then, and this is important, do not mention it again. Notice what comes back to you. Not immediately, but within weeks. The influence loop has started. And once it starts, it does not stop. You are giving. You are building trust. But what happens when someone does not want to follow, when they actively push back? Chapter 9 is all about navigating resistance without losing the relationship or your influence. Chapter 9, navigating resistance, turning skeptics into allies. Every leader faces resistance. The colleague who challenges every idea. The team member who defaults to skepticism. The stakeholder who never seems to be on your side. Most leaders treat resistance as an obstacle to overcome. They build a better argument. They push harder. They try to win. The book proposes something completely different. Resistance is not rejection. It is information. And the way you respond to it determines whether you lose influence or deepen it. The book makes this real with one of the most striking examples in American political history. Abraham Lincoln. When Lincoln was elected president in 1860, he had 3 main political rivals. Men who had run against him. Men who believed, publicly, that they were more qualified than he was. William Seward, Salmon Chase, Edward Bates. Lincoln's first move stunned everyone around him. He appointed all 3 of them directly to his cabinet. His advisors thought it was political suicide. You are handing power to your enemies. Lincoln's response was clear. These are the strongest men in the country. I need them working with me, not against me. The result? Seward, who had called Lincoln a Yahoo, who had dismissed him as unfit for the presidency, later wrote that Lincoln was the greatest man he had ever known. Lincoln did not defeat his resistance. He redirected it. The book distills this into a 3-step method it calls RED. Step 1, receive. Actually hear the objection. Do not interrupt. Do not defend. Do not prepare your counterargument while they are still talking. Just receive it, fully, because until the other person feels genuinely heard, they cannot move. And until they move, neither can you. Step 2. Explore. Ask a question that gets beneath the surface objection to the real concern. The surface objection is almost never the real one. Someone says, "This timeline is unrealistic." What they often mean is, "I do not feel like my capacity has been considered." Someone says, "I do not think this strategy will work." What they often mean is, "I am afraid of what happens to me if it fails." Your job in step 2 is to get to the real concern, not by guessing, by asking, "What specifically worries you most about this? Help me understand what you're seeing that I might be missing." Those 2 questions will open almost any resistance if you ask them with genuine curiosity. Step 3. Direct. Once you understand the real concern, redirect. Not toward your original position, toward shared ground. What do we both want here? What outcome would make this work for both of us? Find the overlap. Build from there. Here is your exercise for this chapter. Think of one person in your life who consistently resists your ideas. Instead of preparing your next argument against them, prepare 3 questions to understand their perspective better. In your next conversation with them, ask the questions. Do not pitch. Do not defend. Just listen and explore. You will change that relationship in a single conversation. And the people who push back hardest, when you earn their trust, become your most powerful advocates. Because they know you did not win them over with pressure. You won them over by actually listening. You can handle the people beside you. But what about the people above you? The ones with actual authority? In Chapter 10, we are tackling one of the most uncomfortable and most critical influence skills. Leading up. Chapter 10. Leading up, influencing those above you. Here is the situation most people find themselves in. You have ideas. You see what needs to change. You know what the right move is. But the decision is not yours to make. And so you wait. You hope the person above you figures it out. Or you quietly resent the gap between what is and what could be. The book says that is the wrong frame entirely. You do not have to wait for authority to influence upward. You just have to understand how. The example the book uses is Sheryl Sandberg. In 2001, Sandberg joined Google as a mid-level manager. No authority over company strategy. No seat at the table where the big decisions were made. Over 4 years, she built such a reputation for execution, for clarity, for bringing solutions instead of problems, that when Eric Schmidt needed a chief of staff, she was the obvious choice. Then she went to Facebook, and she did it again. Zuckerberg publicly credits Sandberg as the person who taught him how to run a business. She never waited to be given influence. She built it from the middle of the org chart by making the people above her more successful every single day. The book extracts 4 rules from her approach. Rule 1, bring solutions, not problems. Every concern you raise comes with at least one proposed answer. Every problem you identify comes with at least one direction forward. This does not mean you have to be right. It means you show up as someone who thinks, not just someone who reports. That distinction changes everything. Rule 2, understand their pressures. What keeps your boss up at night? What does their boss care about? What metrics are they being measured on? When you understand the pressures above you, you can align your contributions to what actually matters to them, not just what matters to you. Rule 3, deliver before you are asked. Anticipate what is needed and move on it proactively. Do not wait to be assigned the task you already know needs doing. Proactive delivery signals something that no presentation ever can. It signals that you think at the level of the person above you, even before you have the title. Rule 4, make them look good. Your success should always reflect on them first. When your initiative works, your first instinct should be to share that credit upward, not hoard it. Because leaders who make their leaders look good get pulled higher. That is not politics. That is how trust compounds over time. Here is your exercise for this chapter. Before your next meeting with a boss or senior leader, write down one thing. What is their single biggest challenge right now? And what is one concrete action I can take this week to help them solve it? Then do that thing. Do not announce the exercise. Do not wait for recognition. Just do it. Watch the dynamic shift. You're leading up, across, and alongside. But in 2025, influence does not stop when you leave the building. In Chapter 11, we're going online because your digital presence is either building your influence while you sleep or quietly destroying it. Chapter 11, Digital Influence, Building Your Presence in a Modern World. Here is a number the book puts front and center. In 2025, your digital presence is the first impression for roughly 80% of the people you will ever influence professionally. 80% before they meet you in a room, before they read your email, before they hear your voice. They have already looked you up, and they have already formed an opinion. The question is not whether you have a digital presence. You do, even if you have never posted a single thing. An empty digital presence is still a signal. It says, this person does not show up here. The question is whether you are shaping that presence deliberately. The book uses Gary Vaynerchuk as its anchor for this chapter, and for good reason. In 2006, Gary took over his family's wine retail business. It was doing $3 million a year. He had no publicist, no media connections, no budget. He started filming himself in a warehouse with a flip camera, reviewing wines. No script, no production value. Just him, the camera, and an opinion, 5 days a week, every week. Within 5 years, Wine Library TV had grown that business to $60 million in annual revenue. Not from advertising, from influence. Digital, consistent, authentic influence, built before anyone in his industry understood what that even meant. Today, Gary V runs a $300 million media and marketing company. The foundation of all of it was a flip camera in a warehouse and the decision to show up digitally every single day. The book is not asking you to be Gary V. It is making a simpler point. If he could build that from zero, you have no structural excuse for being invisible. The book organizes digital influence into what it calls the digital influence pyramid. 3 levels. The foundation, consistency. Show up on one platform, at the same frequency. Always. Not every platform. Not when you feel inspired. One platform. Regular cadence. Non-negotiable. Consistency is the only thing that builds audience trust over time. Not quality alone. Not cleverness alone. Consistency. The middle layer, value density. Every piece of content you put out teaches something, solves something, or genuinely inspires something for the person reading it. Not content that says you are great. Content that makes the reader's day or work slightly better. That is the standard. The peak, authenticity signal. Share real stories, real failures, real wins, not polished PR. The leaders who build the deepest digital influence are the ones who let people see the work, not just the result. The process, not just the outcome. The doubt, not just the confidence. Here is your exercise for this chapter. Commit to one platform this week. Pick one. Write one post that shares a genuine insight from your professional life. Something you learned the hard way. Something you believe that most people in your field are afraid to say. Post it. Do not overthink the format. Do not wait until it is perfect. Your real experience is your content, and it is more powerful than anything you could craft or perform. Your digital presence is growing. Your credibility is building. But here is the unexpected influence move that most people are terrified to make. In Chapter 12, we are talking about the power of saying no, and why the leaders who do it best are always the most respected. Chapter 12, The Art of Saying No, Boundaries that Earn Respect. There's a version of leadership that looks like this. Always available, always helpful, never turning down a request. Present at every meeting, every initiative, every ask. And from the outside, that person looks committed. But from the inside, they're scattered, stretched thin across 20 directions, delivering mediocre results everywhere because they have the focused energy for nothing. The book names this directly. Every yes is a no to something else. And leaders who cannot say no scatter their influence until it becomes meaningless. The example the book uses is brutal in its clarity. Steve Jobs, 1997. Apple is near bankruptcy. Jobs returns as CEO. He walks in and finds a company with over 350 products. 350. His first major decision? He says no to all but 10 of them. He cuts 97% of the product line. Every executive in the room pushes back. The resistance is immediate and intense. Jobs does not move. He says, deciding what not to do is as important as deciding what to do. Within a year, Apple goes from near bankruptcy to profitability. Within a decade, it becomes the most influential consumer technology company in history. The radical act of refusal, focused, unapologetic, strategic no, was the foundation. So how do you apply this without just becoming difficult to work with? The book gives us 3 filters. Every request passes through all 3 before you decide. Filter 1, the vision filter. Does this request align with my top 3 priorities right now? Not my general interests, not things I'm good at. My top 3 priorities, the things that matter most in this specific season. If it does not serve any of them, the answer is almost certainly no. Filter 2, the capacity filter. Can I do this at a level I would be proud of, given everything else I'm already committed to? Not can I technically fit it in? Can I do it well? There's a version of saying yes that is actually a disservice to the person asking. You take on the task. You underdeliver. They would have been better served by your no and an honest explanation. Filter 3, the relationship filter. Is saying yes here actually serving this person long-term? Or am I just avoiding short-term discomfort? Sometimes the most generous thing you can do is saying no clearly and early, so the person can find the right resource instead of waiting on a half-committed one. The book also gives language for the refusal that preserves the relationship. Instead of, I can't do this, try, I'm not going to be able to give this the attention it deserves. I would rather be honest with you now than underdeliver later. That sentence communicates respect. It communicates standards. And it communicates care for the person asking. Here is your exercise for this chapter. Look at your commitments for the next 2 weeks. Find one thing you said yes to, that your gut knew was a no. Either renegotiate it honestly, or protect your calendar so aggressively around it that it does not erode everything else. Then practice the refusal language, out loud, once before you need it. Because the first time you say no skillfully, people do not think less of you. They trust you more. You are focused. You are strategic. But what happens when everything is on fire? In Chapter 13, we are going into the hardest test of influence any leader will ever face. Crisis. Chapter 13. Influence in crisis. Leading when everything falls apart. Crisis does not reveal leadership. It amplifies it. Whatever is already there gets louder. The calm leader becomes a lifeline. The reactive leader becomes a liability. And every person watching remembers. The book opens this chapter with Jacinda Ardern. March 15th, 2019. Christchurch, New Zealand. A terrorist attack on 2 mosques kills 51 people. Ardern's response became a global case study, not because it was perfect, because it was human and decisive at the same time. She appeared in public wearing a hijab. She said the attacker's name exactly once, then declared she would never say it again. She told the nation, he is a terrorist. He is a criminal. He is an extremist. And he will, when I speak, be nameless. She moved gun legislation through Parliament in 26 days. And New Zealand's trust in government hit a historic high in the weeks that followed. The book asks, what did she do that most leaders do not? She combined radical empathy with radical decisiveness. She made the nation feel understood, and then she acted. Those 2 things are not in tension. In crisis, they are partners. The book gives us a 3-stage framework. It calls it acknowledge, anchor, aspire. Stage 1, acknowledge. Name the reality clearly. Do not minimize it. Do not soften it into meaninglessness. Do not hide behind jargon or process language. Say what is happening, and then name the emotional weight of it. I know many of you are frightened. I know this is not what anyone expected. I understand why you are angry. People in crisis do not need a polished statement first. They need to know that you see what they see, and that you are not pretending otherwise. Stage 2. Anchor. Give people 3 specific actions being taken right now. Not a general plan, not a vision statement. 3 concrete actions. Present tense. Specific, because in chaos, specificity is oxygen. Here is what we are doing right now. First, second, third. That structure alone, 3 named actions, reduces panic more than any amount of reassurance. Because it signals someone is thinking clearly. Someone is in control. Stage 3, aspire. Once the reality is acknowledged and the actions are clear, give people a reason to believe in what comes next. Not false optimism, not empty promises. A grounded, specific, values-based statement of direction. We have gotten through hard things before, and we will get through this one together. The book is honest about one pitfall leaders fall into in crisis. Silence. When you go quiet, people assume the worst. And whatever story they tell themselves to fill that silence is almost always worse than the truth. Frequent communication, even brief, even incomplete, keeps people grounded. It is okay to say, we do not have all the answers yet. Here is what we know. Here's what we are doing. We will update you in 24 hours. That is not weakness. That is leadership. Here is your exercise for this chapter. Think of a crisis you are currently navigating, or one you can realistically anticipate. Write a 2-minute script using the 3 stages. Acknowledge, anchor, aspire. Practice delivering it with a steady voice and open posture. Because the leaders who prepare for crisis communication before the crisis arrives, those are the ones who show up clearly when it matters most. You can lead alone, but the most influential leaders in history did not build their legacy solo. In Chapter 14, we're talking about the inner circle and why who you keep close determines how far your influence can reach. Chapter 14, building your inner circle, the people who amplify your influence. No leader's influence scales beyond their inner circle. That is one of the most important sentences in this book. Read it again. No leader's influence scales beyond their inner circle. You can have the best ideas in the room, the clearest vision, the sharpest strategy. But if the 5 people closest to you cannot extend, challenge, and amplify your thinking, your reach has a ceiling. The book uses Barack Obama. In his memoir, A Promised Land, Obama writes about the deliberate construction of his inner circle. Valerie Jarrett, who told him what he did not want to hear. David Axelrod, who held him accountable to his narrative. Michelle Obama, who kept him grounded in his core values when the pressure to compromise was enormous. He specifically sought people with different blind spots than his own. People who would push back, not people who would agree. Obama writes that the quality of his inner circle was the single most important structural factor in his ability to govern under sustained pressure. Not his intelligence, not his preparation, not his policies, his people. The book gives us a framework for building your own. It calls it the inner circle blueprint. For roles. Role 1, the challenger. This is the person who pushes back on your ideas before anyone else sees them. They are not a critic. They're a stress tester. They help you find the holes in your thinking before your opponents do. If you do not have a challenger in your inner circle, your blind spots are growing unchecked. Role 2, the connector. This is the person who expands your network into spaces you cannot reach directly. They open doors you do not know exist. They know people you need to know, and they make the introduction naturally, generously, without keeping score. Role 3, the anchor. This is the person who keeps you grounded in your values when the pressure mounts. When success starts to pull you away from who you are, the anchor notices first. When you're about to make a decision that feels strategic but does not feel right, The anchor says so. Role 4, the amplifier. This is the person who takes your message and extends it to audiences you cannot reach directly. They champion your ideas in rooms you are not in. They speak well of your work when you're not there to do it yourself. Here is the key insight the book offers about this. Most people accidentally build inner circles full of amplifiers and anchors. They feel good. They are supportive. They affirm. But without a challenger, you are operating in an echo chamber. And echo chambers produce confident leaders who are wrong. Here is your exercise for this chapter. Map your current inner circle. Write down the 5 people you consult most. Assign each of them one of the 4 roles. Be honest. Then ask, where are the gaps? If you have no challenger, that is the most urgent gap. Find one person who consistently disagrees with you productively. Invest in that relationship this week. Your circle is strong. Your influence is growing. But here's the question every leader eventually has to face. What happens to your influence when you are not in the room? Chapter 15, the final chapter, is about the legacy that outlives every title, every role, and every chapter you will ever write. Chapter 15, sustaining your influence, making impact that outlasts you. There are 2 kinds of influence. Temporary influence is built on performance, on your title, on your access, on your ability to produce results in a specific role at a specific time. The moment the role ends, the influence fades. Lasting influence is built on transformation, in the people you develop, in the systems you build, in the values you embed in everything you touch. When the role ends, the influence keeps going. The book closes with Maya Angelou. Angelou never held a corporate title, never ran a company, never led a government. And yet her influence on American culture, on leadership philosophy, on how human beings understand dignity and resilience, it has only grown since her death in 2014. CEOs quote her in earnings calls. Presidents recite her words at inaugurations. Athletes cite her as the mentor who changed how they think about failure. Why? Because everything she created, every poem, every speech, every interview was built to outlast her. She once said, "People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did. But people will never forget how you made them feel." That was not a quote. That was her entire influence strategy. And it has proven, literally, immortal. The book gives us a framework it calls the legacy influence model. 3 layers. Layer 1, people. Who are you developing? The people you invest in carry your influence forward after you are gone. Your mentor, your protégés, the junior person you believed in before anyone else did. When they succeed, a piece of your influence moves with them into rooms you will never enter, long after you have left. Layer 2, systems. What processes, cultures, or habits are you building that work without you? The meeting structure that keeps teams aligned. The feedback culture you installed that outlives your tenure. The decision-making framework your team still uses 3 leaders later. Systems are the infrastructure of lasting influence. They are how one person's thinking touches thousands of people they will never personally meet. Layer 3, story. What narrative do you want told about you? And are you consciously building it today? Not your title, not your resume, your story, the arc of how you showed up, what you stood for, and what you helped other people become. Here is your exercise for this chapter. Write your influence eulogy, not a death notice. A 1-paragraph description of how you want to be remembered as a leader. What did you stand for? What did you build? Whose life did you change, and how? Write it now, then read it every morning this week, and lead toward it. Because here's the truth this entire book has been building toward. You do not need authority to lead. You never did. You need presence. You need emotional intelligence. You need credibility, story, generosity, and the courage to say no when it matters. You need to invest in people above you, beside you, and coming up behind you. And you need to play a long enough game that what you build outlasts the role you are in right now. That is influence. Real, deep, lasting influence. and it is available to anyone willing to do the work. Conclusion. No Rescue Audiobooks fam, what a journey. 15 chapters, 15 principles, one complete blueprint for building influence that lasts. Let's bring it all together. Chapter 1 gave us the mindset shift from authority-based thinking to attraction-based leadership, the foundation everything else is built on. Chapter 2 showed us that presence is a skill, not a personality trait. How you show up before you speak determines everything. Chapter 3 revealed that listening, real listening at all 3 levels, is the most powerful influence tool in any room. Chapter 4 unlocked emotional intelligence, self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, social navigation, the 4-part engine behind every leader who moves people consistently. Chapter 5 built credibility on 3 pillars: competence, consistency, courage, all 3, always. Chapter 6 gave us the 4-part persuasion arc. Name the pain, amplify the stakes, offer the bridge, make it inevitable. Chapter 7 made us storytellers, because logic informs, but story converts. 7 areas of the brain. At the same time, Chapter 8 built the influence loop. Give knowledge, give attention, give opportunity. First, often, and without keeping score. Chapter 9 showed us that resistance is not rejection, it is information. The red method: receive, explore, direct. Skeptics become allies when you stop trying to win and start trying to understand. Chapter 10 gave us the 4 rules of leading up. Bring solutions, understand their pressures, deliver before you are asked, make them look good. Chapter 11 took us digital. Consistency, value density, authenticity signal. Your online presence is building your influence right now, or it is not. Chapter 12 gave us the courage to say no, the vision filter, the capacity filter, the relationship filter. Strategic refusal is not selfishness. It is how focused leaders protect their most important yes. Chapter 13 prepared us for crisis. Acknowledge, anchor, aspire. Calm, clear, compassionate communication in the hardest moments builds the deepest loyalty. Chapter 14 showed us that influence scales through people. The challenger, the connector, the anchor, the amplifier. Your inner circle is the hidden architecture of how far you go. And Chapter 15 elevated everything from performance to transformation. People, systems, story. The 3 layers of influence that outlast any title you will ever hold. Now let me tell you about Marcus. In 2022, Marcus was a mid-level project manager at a logistics company in Atlanta. No direct reports, no budget authority. He had been passed over for promotion twice. He was good at his job, but he had no influence beyond his desk. He started applying every principle in this book. He shifted his mindset from "I need authority" to "I need earned trust." He started listening before he spoke, actually listening at level 3. He kept an emotion log for 2 weeks and discovered that most of his friction at work came from one unaddressed fear. He started keeping every small promise he made, every single one. He started giving, sharing what he knew, making introductions, showing up for people before they asked. When resistance came, and it did, he stopped trying to win arguments. He asked better questions instead. He used the red method with a colleague who had been his biggest critic for 2 years. That colleague became his strongest internal advocate within a month. He started leading up, bringing solutions to his manager instead of problems, anticipating what was needed before he was asked. He built a LinkedIn presence. Nothing fancy, 1 post a week, real insights from his actual work. He said no to 3 projects that were not aligned with his core priorities and delivered extraordinary results on the 2 he kept. When a supply chain crisis hit in 2023, leadership did not call the most senior person in the room. They called Marcus, not because of his title, because of the trust he had built. He navigated it using the three-stage crisis framework. He acknowledged the reality. He gave the team 3 clear actions. He gave them a reason to believe they would come out the other side. 6 months later, he was promoted to director of operations. But here's what Marcus says is his biggest win. When he got promoted, people on his old team told him, separately, unprompted, that working with him had changed how they thought about their own careers. That is not just influence. That is legacy. And it started with one mindset shift in Chapter 1. Here is your challenge. Pick one principle from today's video. Just one. Maybe it is crafting your vision statement. Maybe it is the 3-second pause before you respond. Maybe it is posting your first real insight online. Maybe it is writing your influence eulogy and reading it every morning. Pick one. Write it down. Put a date next to it. Then come back and tell us in the comments what happened. We read every single comment and want to hear your wins. If this video gave you something real, a reframe, a new idea, a moment of recognition, hit the thumbs up, subscribe, and ring the bell. We drop deep dive summaries every week built to give you real, applicable frameworks, not motivation that fades in an hour. Share this with one person who needs to hear it. That is how influence works. You pass it forward. And drop in the comments which chapter hit you hardest. Until next time, keep growing, keep leading, keep building influence that lasts. No Rescue Audiobooks out.